In this video, we're going to cover what I call escalating consequences. These are ways to disagree with the dog for doing something you don't want it to do. Now, I derive these, or at least two of these, from how dogs interact with each other. Yes, you'll get this here in a second. I want to keep you motivated. So the very first thing that I do is, my very first consequence is something I call, well, I don't call it, I hiss. I don't like using the word no, because no is the 51st most commonly used word in the English language, and dogs have something called learned irrelevance. If a word is used around them, it's not directed them with enough frequency, they just stop listening for it. No, being such a top, such a heavily used word, falls in that category really quickly. I like using a hissing sound like a cat. Now, the reason I use, instead of saying the word no, so the reason I use that a couple things. Number one, the dog knows who we're talking to. Don't hiss at your partner or your kids. It will not work on humans. Number two, cats, skunks, snakes, cougars, mountain lions, even bunny rabbits make a hissing sound as a warning. So my hiss I translate to no, don't do that, or most effectively, don't even think about doing that. Just like us, if you try to stop two people from having an argument and they're invested in the argument, it's very difficult. If one of them's like, can you believe what Donald Trump said? And he goes, guys, I don't want to talk politics, they can let it go easier. So when you're going to correct for the dog, it's going to be much easier if you correct the dog right away, as opposed, or before they do the wrong thing, as opposed to after. Missy. Okay, so if I want to disagree with her taking this bully stick, so I have 10 hisses. I have a level 1 hiss like this. Now I have a level 10 like, so you saw she stopped and paid attention. I want to have nuance. For dogs, if the dog's at like level 7 intensity or energy and I hiss at level 4, it won't hear me, or if it hears me, it won't respect it, it won't respond. So always meet or exceed the dog's energy level. Only hiss one time per incident. What you might want to do is practice when you're driving, do a level 10, then do a level 1, do level 2, do level 9, back and forth. All right, so the very first thing you're going to do is make a hissing sound like a cat. Now, like I talked about in another video, for dogs, sitting is a more subordinate position. For dogs, standing up is your business position. And that's absolutely the case for dogs as well. So when I stand up, this means I am serious about it. If you're yelling at your dog while you're seated, and you're not willing to bring the energy to get up, you're not really mean it as far as your dog is concerned. So the first thing I do, if the dog, and let's say I'm eating food and the dog's approaching, I would hiss when the dog is about a foot away from the boundary. Let's say it's 7 feet, so I'd hiss at 8 feet. Unless the dog is running. If it was running, I might go hiss at 9 feet. Give it a little bit more time. If it crossed that threshold, then I would immediately stand up. Now, when dogs communicate with each other through movement, it's typically one big, bold, sudden movement. Don't do a whole bunch of little movements suddenly, because they think that's playing or a game. So one big sudden movement, stand up, I call it jack-in-the-boxing up. Now, when you're standing up, your authority is directional. It goes whatever direction your hips are pointing. Right now, my authority is pointing right there. So if the dog was where the camera is, and the dog walked that way, and I kept facing here, now the dog's over here, it literally walked away from my authority. So if, in this case, the dog's walking that way, I pivot. I'm going to keep the dog in front of me until it communicates to me that it is no longer challenging. It will do this by doing one of 3 things. It will stop, it will either stand, sit, or lie down. It will stop moving. So as soon as it does that, I want to communicate that's what I wanted, and I do that by taking 2 steps backwards. 1 for each step. Boom, boom. Don't go like this. This looks like I'm meandering around. When I communicate through movement, it's a big, sudden, bold step. So boom, boom. Now, let me translate what was going on here from a dog's perspective. Let's say that you at home are eating some chicken nuggets. I walk over, you hiss at me before I cross the line. Well, man, I gotta move away. And then you open some honey mustard. I'm like, honey mustard is my jam. I gotta come back. This time you stand up and I stop. I'm like, ooh, and I take a step back because I want what I call escapability as a dog. Ooh, she stood up. She means business. Is she talking to me? I'm gonna identify if she's talking to me by going this way. So the camera follows me like it is. I'm like, oh, yep, she's talking to me. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. How do I communicate that I don't want her to keep on doing this? I'm going to stop. So as soon as the dog's stationary, stand, sit, or lie down, you take those 2 steps backwards as your way of saying, because you stopped challenging me by stopping your movement, I backed away from you, lowering the intensity of my disagreement. This is the second consequence. Standing up abruptly, turning and facing the dog until it's stationary, and taking 2 steps backwards. Pause a second, and you can go back to doing what you're doing. The third escalating consequence involves giving and taking territory. For dogs, like I mentioned in one of the other videos, if the dog's right here and I want to take something, I'm just going to invade its personal space and try to intimidate it. So for this sort of scenario, what I'm going to do is walk towards the dog briskly. And when I say march, and I don't mean marching by stomping your feet, I mean moving briskly. You want to give the dog a flinching experience. If I don't get out of their way, the human is going to run me over. Now, for those of you watching at home that don't have a little dog, it's gonna be different for the little dogs. But if people have a big dog, and I see them when they get to the dog, they like walk like this. So don't walk like that. Walk normally. Just walk through the dog. If you bump into the dog, that's fine. A general rule of little dog training tip I'll insert in here in this video full of tips is for dogs, leaders don't defer to followers. If the dog is in my way and I'm walking that way to go to the bathroom and I take extra steps to walk around the dog, I'm burning extra energy and I'm deferring away from the dog. So that tells the dog, look how powerful I am. People spend extra energy to go around me instead of asking me to get up. So if your dog's asleep, kicking and saying, wake up, that's being rude. But if the dog is in your way standing, walk through your dog. The dog needs to learn, I need to defer and get out of humans' ways. That's a great way of helping have a healthy leader-follower dynamic. Okay, so in this situation, when the dog is marching towards, when the dog is challenging me, I'm going to march directly towards the dog until the dog communicates to me that it's no longer challenging me. Now, in this scenario, it's not going to do it by freezing. It's going to do it if I'm the dog and I'm backing up. I could be backing up 12 miles. If I'm still facing you, I'm still challenging. For a dog, this is confrontational or a challenge. Sideways is approachable. Behind you, you're defenseless. So if I'm here, and the camera doesn't have to move, but the person marches at me and I just back up like 12 miles, but I'm still facing, I'm still challenging for those chicken nuggets, which you should not eat. Those are not very good for you. So as a dog, when I want to communicate that I know the human's upset with me, is I'm backing up, I'm going to do this. I'm going to turn sideways or greater. As soon as the dog turns sideways, you want to freeze. Immediately. The timing of this is crucial. Now, if I stand here like this, my feet apart, this looks a little indecisive, this split stance that I have here. So I would complete my movement or retract my movement, and now I'm going to pivot. I'm going to go to the second consequence. I'm pivoting it and watch it follow the dog as it's stationary. As soon as it's stationary, or as long as it moves, as soon as it's stationary, I take that step back. I'll wait a second, then I can go back to doing what I'm doing. Now, the third consequence, like I said, I call it marching, but you have to move towards the dog with some intent. A lot of people they start off slow, they speed up, and then they stop right in front of the dog. I was like, well, I don't have to move. She stopped herself. The dog needs to think, if I am still here when the human gets here, the human is running me over. Now, the only time this wouldn't apply is if the dog is beyond the boundary. This is the kitchen area. Let's say the rule is that there's a line right here. Now, there's no line on the floor, but this is where we enforce it. So let's say as a dog, for whatever reason, I'm not allowed to be across this line. So the boundary is I should be on this side of the line. But the human's over there eating something, so I cross the line, and the human gets up and marches at me, and I turn sideways right away. Well, I'm still not supposed to be in this area. So the human would ignore me when I turn sideways, and would keep bumping into me, and would stop once they got to the line. This is how you can enforce an arbitrary boundary, that there's no designation on the floor. Now, she's a little dog, she's pretty quick. So I'm going to kind of use, when I finish this, I'm going to demonstrate how you can use the escalating consequences to keep her out of an area. That's the third consequence. March directly at the dog and keep track of wherever the dog is. I've seen people that they're marching this way, the dog walks that way, they keep marching. You march wherever the dog is until it turns sideways or greater, and then stop, unless it's in the boundary. The fourth consequence is what I was saying I was doing off camera in the first video. I put her on a leash and I stepped on a leash. I call this a leash timeout. Now, if she's standing right there, I would give her about that much room with the leash, so she can have her head up. Can you see her in the shot? Mm-hmm. So she could be standing with her head up, but without being able to go anywhere else. Now, at first, she's probably going to throw a temper tantrum and flop around. As long as your dog doesn't have brittle bones, these guys do, so you might want to use a harness for that. But if she flops around, it's a good way to burn energy. We don't want her to get hurt, so try to do it on carpet. And you want to be short enough so she doesn't have a lot of room to get too much momentum going. Usually a minute later, sometimes several minutes later, the dog will sit down. Now when the dog, and I use the kiss as my affirmation to get the dog to come. Now when the dog sits, I'm going to take the foot, they're going to sit as far away as the leash will allow. So it's going to be a tense leash. Dogs have something called an opposition reflex. They will automatically pull it anytime they're pulled against or push anytime they're pushed against. So if the dog sits here and the leash is tense, as soon as I take my foot off the leash, the dog feels it can run away. So if the dog's sitting here where the table is, as soon as it sits, and I do not tell it to sit, I wait for it to sit on its own. As soon as it sits, I take the foot that's on the leash, I slide it towards the dog to take that tension off of the leash. Usually a minute later, sometimes several minutes later, the dog will lay down. Like I talked about in an earlier video, sitting is a more subordinate position, says I'm challenging you less. Laying down is a surrender position. I've given up, I'm not challenging you anymore. So as soon as the dog lays down, I take my foot very subtly off of the leash. I don't tell it good job, I don't pet it, I don't detach the leash. If I do any of those three things, the dog thinks we're done. I can go back to taking his chicken nuggets or whatever it is. So what we do is we're saying if you're going to be defiant, the consequence is you lose all freedom. I warned you not to do it by hissing at you. You did it anyways, so I stood up. You did it again, so I marched at you. You did it again, so I gave you the leash timeout. Now, I don't tell the dog to sit or lie down. I wait for them to do it on their own. And when the dog sits, it's challenging me less. It lays down, it stops challenging me at all. I take my foot off the leash. Now, at this point, the leash is still attached. It is dangerous for a dog to run around dragging the leash unsupervised. So only do this if you're supervising the dog. But if the dog misbehaves again, we just step on the leash as it runs by and we reapply the consequence. Or if a couple minutes go by and the dog is nice and amicable, it's not doing anything wrong, then we detach the leash. It's not a quid pro quo. All right, so now that she's a little bit further away, I'm going to show you how to use the third consequence. So I combine the first and the third here. Now, we know that she really likes this thing. And I'm enforcing the line right here. Now, I have some high-value treats. We'll make it even more challenging. And my hips are pointed at her. Wherever she goes, track it. As she's moving away, it's her way of saying, I'm not challenging anymore. In this case, to enforce a boundary, I'll do this. Actually, without stopping filming, come around this way and go back into your living room so you can kind of get us both in the shot. So basically, the dog is walking back and forth. I'm keeping my authority pointed at the dog. I don't let the dog cross the line, which is basically right here. Puppy, puppy. Now there's a whole bunch of high-value training treats right here on the floor. Normally, the guardian asked me earlier off camera, how on earth am I going to get her to stay out of the kitchen? I got like half a dozen of these high-value training treats and the bully stick, which she loved, right here on the floor. There's nothing but air between her and the floor, and now she's breaking the rules. She's on the chair, that's okay, but she wants nothing to do with it because my authority is pointed here. And I'm behind it. I'm not standing in front of it like a guard. But I can come over here and kind of act like I'm doing, farting around, doing some stuff. And she's staying over there. She's not coming to try to do it because she's respecting my authority.